What does it take to be remembered? Not just as a name on a business card or as a memory of a fleeting trend online, but as someone whose story shapes the world, inspires movements, and sparks conversations long after you're gone. Building a personal brand today isn't just fluff. It's how leaders, creators, and visionaries carve out their place in history. But here's the truth. Most people get it wrong. They're chasing trends. They try to go viral, then they fade away. But the secret to building a personal brand that stands the test of time? It's not new. It's ancient. It's written into our human nature. Throughout history, the most influential figures have mastered this art, leaving behind legacies that endured for centuries. So if you're ready, let's learn from a young man who didn't just conquer the known world, he conquered our hearts and minds. A man whose name has echoed across 23 centuries. Your teacher today is Alexander the Great. On the day Alexander was born, his father, King Philip II of Macedonia, was preparing a siege on the city of Potidea. On the same day, as if by divine providence, King Philip got word that his general, Parmenion, had made a stunning victory against the combined forces of two enemy armies. And simultaneously, his horses had won at the Olympic Games. Elsewhere, on the same day, in Ephesus, the temple of Artemis burnt down. People said the goddess Artemis was too busy attending the birth of Alexander to stop her temple from burning down. Thus was born a legend. And it is from this legend that we are going to learn a little bit about building our very own personal brand. Alexander's personal brand was being cultivated even before his birth. This is because his very ambitious mother, Olympias, had a dream on the eve of the consummation of her marriage to King Philip II that her womb was struck by lightning that caused a flame to spread far and wide before the fire died away. Lightning, as we all know, of course, being the main power of Zeus, also known for his gallivanting around with humans. Some say Olympias may have cunningly suggested that her son had divine origins to secure his position in the kingdom, going so far as to constantly refer to him as the son of Zeus later on in life as well. By the age of 22, in 334 BC, Alexander invaded Asia. The first town that he reached was Troy, where he brought homages to his personal heroes like Achilles, who he thought he was a descendant of. Now, the Battle of Troy was a big deal for Greeks. Paying homage to Achilles was as symbolic as it was sympathetic. But what does this have to do with my personal brand, you ask? Well, it all comes back to how human beings became the dominant species on planet Earth. About 70,000 years ago, humans evolved the ability to cooperate in large groups. And this is a trait that has set us apart from all the other creatures. Now, anthropologist Yuval Noah Harari explains in Sapiens, his book, that the key ability that we humans possess that other creatures do not is our ability to create shared myths. Stories, beliefs, ideologies, these are crucial for creating cohesion in society far larger than small tribes. These shared myths tap into our emotional and cultural touchstones, forming the glue that binds people together. Myths provide a sense of identity and purpose, making individuals feel a part of something greater. When Alexander's mother started to promulgate the story that he was the son of Zeus, Zeus being the king of gods in the Greek pantheon, it had a very real impact on how Alexander was perceived by the people. And when Alexander paid homage to Achilles at Troy, it wasn't just an act of respect, it was a public spectacle designed to reinforce his connection to these shared myths. To Greeks, this link made Alexander more than a leader. He became a part of their cultural and spiritual fabric. Now, you, my mortal friend, can do this too. Not by claiming that you are the Son of God, but by integrating into the cultures of your respective audience, by aligning with their values, by sharing opinions that resonate with them. If your personal brand is built around, for example, personal finance and investing, and you know your audience are people looking to learn about the beginner financing and investing, then you need to keep your language simple. Talk about your opinions of their everyday struggles and show how your advice fits into their ordinary lives. Now, at this point, you might be tempted to think that this divine reputation gave Alexander unlimited authority over his army and his people. But weirdly, that wasn't the case. There was something else that Alexander had that gave him incredible power over his followers. Growing up, Alexander watched as his father, King Philip II, ambitiously attempted to conquer the mighty Persian Empire. Philip needed the support of all Greeks from this endeavor. So, he rallied support of the Greeks by creating a propaganda campaign where he claimed that the Persians needed to be punished for the defilement of Greek temples by the previous Persian ruler named Xerxes. And it worked because the Greeks supported the war efforts against the Persians. Alexander was quite strongly influenced by this propaganda himself. But paradoxically, Alexander was also an ardent fan of the great Persian king Cyrus the Great. Cyrus the Great created the very first Persian empire, and Alexander wanted to leave a legacy as great or greater than Cyrus. When Alexander's father Philip died and he took over as king, it was clear as day to him that his legacy had to be to conquer all of Persia. And just like his father, Alexander used the same propaganda tricks to rally support to fight against the Persians. He took up the mantle of his father's conquest and added in that he was spreading the good word of Hellenism, aka Greek culture, to liberate the barbarians of the East. Just like modern day America spreads democracy, Alexander used Hellenism as the rallying cry. Needless to say, it was dramatically successful. And herein lies the secret that gave him that special power over his people. They would follow him into hell if they needed to because of this powerful element. So what was the secret thing that he had? It was a mission bigger than himself. This seems so banal, but Alexander knew the value of a mission larger than himself, and the value of the mission in leading an empire. Research has shown that we tend to be happier, more content, and enjoy richer relationships and are much more resilient in the face of adversity, and also far more inspiring leaders when we have a purpose that's greater than ourselves. Simon Sinek, the world-famous inspirational speaker on leadership and a best-selling author, talks about how important it is to have a mission greater than yourself in his book, Start With Why. He describes having a reason beyond just making money is absolutely paramount to building and leading a great organization. When building your personal brand, you have to start with a why. What is your reason beyond making money, beyond building your own image, beyond just benefiting yourself? Alexander knew this idea very well. and always had a strong why to support his endeavors. Do you? A lot of people have strong whys to their mission, but for some reason they can never achieve the kind of success that Alexander did. So many of us then come to the conclusion, oh well, the why isn't that important. But Alexander shows us that while the why is of utmost importance, there is a price to be paid if you want your cause to work. In 334 BC, Alexander took an army of 40,000 infantry and 6,000 cavalry to invade Persia. There, he almost lost the battle, but scraped through and eventually met with the Persian king Darius III's army. Darius's army was bigger, much bigger. Some say 95,000 men, with about half of them being cavalry. So as you can imagine, King Darius was pretty damn confident that Alexander was marching into a slaughter. But Alexander and his army marched along expecting a decisive victory. And when he saw the scale of his enemy, he paused. He took time to think about a plan. And his generals, they recommended, we need to do a night attack. But Alexander knew his enemy would be expecting that. He said, or he's quoted as saying, Alexander does not steal his victories. So he came up with a new strategy, ordered his men to take new positions, and goes to bed early. Darius, on the other hand, paranoid by Alexander's unexpected pause, orders his men to stay up and be alert all night, fully expecting a night attack. The next day, Alexander and his men, well rested and prepared, head into battle against a worn-out and sleep-deprived enemy. Alexander naturally leads from the front. The end result of this battle was a total victory for the Greeks. Alexander lost less than 1,000 men. The Persians, up to 50,000. Alexander the Great is often referred to as one of the greatest and most successful military commanders in history. He was undefeated in battle. The price Alexander pays to achieve this success is getting his hands dirty. He knew that he needed the trust of his people to achieve great things, and trust is gained from credibility. And credibility is painstakingly built from doing the work over and over again until you're bored of it. Alexander built a brand of reliability and competence, consistently delivering results by doing the hard work himself. You can do all the branding tricks in the world, but at the end of the day, your work is what speaks the loudest. You have to put in the work. Alexander knew that there were no shortcuts, so he went all in on his strategies and his ideas and always led from the front. He built, over time, a track record of excellence. Whatever you're hoping to be known for, you have to show the people that you aren't afraid to get in the mud and get your hands dirty. Historians sometimes debate if Alexander was being a bit too callous. Constantly getting his hands dirty in combat is not the wisest move for a king. And when you're always in the mud, there's a chance people will think you're always dirty. Yet, despite this, Arrian, the ancient Greek historian, wrote that no mortal man equaled or excelled Alexander. It's no accident that he said this. There is very little consensus of what Alexander looked like. The reason being that Alexander carefully crafted or curated his appearance by commissioning works from famous and great artists of his time. Most of the art makes him look heroic and semi-divine. Alexander was very aware of how his appearance was perceived by the people. He would even use this to his advantage in politics and diplomacy. For example, after defeating the Persian king, Darius III, and conquering all of Persia, Suddenly, Alexander strangely started dressing like a Persian and sometimes even adopting their cultural behaviors, very unlikely for a Greek. He did this as a means to unify Persians under his command. It wasn't enough that he actually did amazing things that almost no one could do. He also had to make sure that this was visually communicated wherever possible. It's almost like he understood that visual representations like images and brand materials prime people to associate with him certain traits or values. Alexander's statues signal power and divinity, just as a modern professional's polished look can signal professionalism. Your look or aesthetic is pretty important to building a personal brand like Alexander's. Alex Hormozy has a look of utilitarianism, always in shorts, ready for anything. Chris Do, the famed designer, has a cool streetwear aesthetic mixed in with some professional attire, creating a sort of versatile look that suits his designer audience. Aesthetics vary greatly. You will find some wearing t-shirts with rock bands and others wearing a three-piece suit with everything in between, whatever you can imagine. Do not, however, make the mistake of thinking your aesthetics doesn't matter. Find what you feel is true to your own identity, but one that is polished for you. It doesn't always have to conform to the popular cultural idea of ideal, but it definitely does need to conform to some idea of ideal. Be goth, be American dad, be a big beard Muslim, be something, but be it well. Take care in crafting the look that's pleasing and relatable to your audience. Looks, however, are not everything. Despite his carefully curated look, Alexander could not have been remembered for thousands of years if not for the effort he made in fostering his mythical legacy. Alexander didn't just find artists to ensure his image would be strictly controlled. He also found ways to cement his name in brick and stone. After battling the Persians for the first time and winning, he went south to Egypt. More conquests awaited there. Of course, nothing stood in his way, and after Egypt was fully under his control, he literally named a city after himself. That city is called Alexandria, and it's a real city that still stands, and it's one of the largest cities in the area even today. These achievements seem out of reach for most people though, and sure, Bill Gates can create his Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation to immortalize his name, but us mere mortals cannot do this. So what can you do? Well, the underlying reason behind why these actions work is one core principle, and that's a cognitive bias called availability heuristic. This is where we take a mental shortcut that relies on immediate examples that come to our mind while evaluating any specific topic or concept, method, or decision. You can do this too. If you create useful, highly valuable content, systems, abbreviations, or any other inferences that help people, and you can associate it with yourself. For example, the technique I'm using right now to create this hard light on my body and soft light on my face is called soft home. Literally, soft on face, hard on body. But as far as I can tell, it is only called this on a YouTube channel called The Wandering DP by its host, Patrick O'Sullivan, a director of photography who has built his personal brand around the mastery of cinematography. Coining a term like this makes it easy to reference this technique. Do enough of this, and your name pops up more often than not when thinking of this subject because of the availability heuristic. Sometimes, however, it's not about your work or your look. It's not about having a mission or how important it is. It's not even about how well you vibe in the culture of your audience. It's sometimes something much more human than that. A humanness that Alexander understood much better than all of us. According to Arian, When Alexander and his army were making the arduous crossing of the Gedrosian Desert, modern-day southern Pakistan, in 325 BC, the men were suffering from extreme heat and excruciating thirst. And here's a quote from Aryan himself. As they toiled on, a party of light infantry which had gone off looking for water found some. Just a wretched little trickle collected in a shallow gully. They scooped up with difficulty what they could and hurried back with their priceless treasure to Alexander. Then, just before they reached him, they tipped the water into a helmet and gave it to him. Alexander, with a word of thanks for the gift, took the helmet and in full view of all his troops, poured the water on the ground. So extraordinary was the effect of this action that the water wasted by Alexander was as good as a drink for every man in the army. This show of solidarity with his men's suffering was a huge part of Alexander's personality and his success as a great king. Why was it so important? Because all human beings crave connection, and this action created a strong connection between Alexander and his men. Neuroscientists like Matthew Lieberman show us that we have evolved to need connection. He says that we tend to assume that people's behavior is narrowly self-interested, focused on getting more material benefits for themselves and avoiding physical threats and exertion of effort. But because of how social pain and pleasure are wired into our operating system, these are motivational ends in and of themselves. We don't focus on being connected solely in order to extract money and other resources from people. Being connected needs no ulterior motive. Just like Alexander's army, all audiences are looking for connection too. This is really part of the human condition. Alexander intuitively knew this when he poured that water into the ground. He knew that he would need to create that deep connection with his men. I am one of you. We suffer together. When building a personal brand, it is vital you understand this need for connection and take steps to make your audience feel connected to you. But how? Start by replying to comments with genuine, well-thought-out answers. Share your audience's thoughts in future videos. Host AMAs. Read and reply to their emails. Create a community through Discord where you can directly chat with your audience. Try to find more creative ways to engage with your audience. It can get difficult to do once your audience gets bigger. But remember that Alexander's army was about 30,000 people strong that day, and he didn't have instantaneous messaging to each of their devices. Your brand building work doesn't end after you click upload. That's just the start. Alexander was one of the greatest leaders history has ever seen. However, the world has changed dramatically from when he was alive, but the one thing that hasn't changed has been human nature. Alexander understood human nature well, and he created his legacy by leveraging our predictable behavior. He created his habits to fit into the culture of his target audience. He had a mission that was bigger than himself. He got into the mud and put in the work, but also spent time carefully molding his visual image to appeal to his audiences. And all the while, he ensured his legacy lives on through his creations. But most importantly, he made efforts to connect with his people. Now, I hope you can do the same with your personal brand as well. There are, of course, a lot more lessons from other great personalities in history, and a lot more to learn about personal branding. But for now, I hope your lesson with Alexander has given you the tools to become someone worthy of the title, The Great.